Well, hello there everyone. Nevergrave the Witch and the Curse is a new Metroidvania where you play as a sentient hat trying to regain your other half of your soul that was torn from your body. And I've already lied to you because I wish this game was just a straight up Metroidvania where you played as a sentient hat. Nevergrave is instead a textbook example of why you shouldn't try to make an everything game. It's a Metroidvania, so exploration and backtracking are key, except it's also a roguelike, so equipment buffs and level design is kind of randomized, except instead of an interconnected world, you have a hub world with 4 different worlds you travel to, but they unlock one at a time, so it's more like a 2D platformer with some action RPG elements, except the hub world and town building is a key part of the game, so you spend a lot of time there, so it's like a life sim. But to do that, you need to get materials, which has you running through the levels over and over again for the crafting system, which can get repetitive, which, okay, fine. And then the game decides to take a page from the Metroidvania catalog again, because out of nowhere, you'll have points where you're required to get special power-ups that are hidden in these levels, and that are permanent upgrades, and they become mandatory to progress further on into the inner levels of the game. Oh, but once you unlock the traversal upgrades, it gives you access to optional secret routes in each level, which adds some nice variety to the game's levels and a bit of scenery touch-ups as well as optional challenges for fun. Except for the very last one, which contains the final artifact that's mandatory for the game's true ending. And as a bonus, the game makes you play Terraria with the town building near the end of it because they put the portal to the 5th and final level high up in the fucking sky. Oh, and the game also has cooking, farming, and life sim elements, and does anyone else see the problem here? Now, despite how it sounds, I actually didn't hate this game, but this is why I don't stand by the let them cook statement, because it tries too hard to be an everything game, which results in it feeling like an unfocused mess. But outside of the final artifact being behind a warp maze that is Shin Megami Tensei Apocalypse levels of evil, and I say that with zero exaggeration, there was still fun to be had here. The combat can be quite fun, and with your hat being able to possess stronger enemies, it had a bit of a Mario Odyssey shtick going on, which helped with puzzle solving. And this game also has some boss fights to battle. 8 of them that I could find, and I say that because there's supposed to be a way to fight and defeat the shopkeeper in the game, which has an achievement. But there's a reason why the achievement has a less than 1% clear rate, because I could not find a way to aggro this guy to save my life. And it's a shame because it's always funny to see how roguelikes make the achievement, well, make the merchant the deadliest opponent in the planet. But I was able to at least unlock the true final boss, which only has a 2.4% clear rate, so there's that. This intro's gone on entirely too long, so let's get into the boss ranking already. Number 8, Deadly Blossom. Given the roguelike nature of the game, I know RNG can play a major role in these boss fights, and I would like to point out that I battled every boss in this game at least 3 times to get a full idea, so I can safely say that this boss fight has too much fucking health, and it single-handedly drags down what would otherwise be a pretty fun boss fight. Initially, the battle is unassuming. The giant flower bud just swings back and forth like Spore Spawn, firing off a few attacks, but ultimately not being very threatening. The problem is his second health bar, where he turns into the Deadly Blossom. This fight frustrates me to no end because it shouldn't be a problem. None of his attacks are badly designed and he's actually pretty well animated, but he just doesn't die. For reference, my first win against this boss took about 20 minutes to beat him. That's entirely too long for the World 2 boss, considering he can also do quite a bit of damage. Thing is, after my first run, I was willing to give him some grace because I learned the skill level ups aren't minor boosts, they are exponential improvements. And I will admit, I should have gained a few more skill levels before I came in to fight him. And when I rematched him with a burn heavy build that got a 600% damage increase to burning enemies, the battle was still lengthy, but it was a fun 6 minutes fight. And 2 level 6 fire spells, plus the 600% damage multiplier, yeah, it did well. But I battled him again in the in-game with maxed out stats, had 2 level 8 fire spells, just lacking that 600% damage multiplier, and the boss fight took 17 minutes again. This boss has just too damn much HP, and if you don't get very specific buffs from your run, you're up a creek without a paddle. And while I don't hate the garden region, the run back would be obnoxious. To be fair, he doesn't hit as hard as some bosses, but when he's got enemy spawns, an AoE nuke that covers half the arena, a very long-range melee charge, spikes that ricochet around the arena, adds, lingering pollen AoEs, and bullet hell projectiles, there's a ton of shit to dodge and he'll wear you down over time. He has a fun moveset, but not one I'd want to deal with for 20 minutes without break. And even when you kill him the second time, the fight isn't over because he has a third health bar. The Angry Deadly Blossom will charge at you, performing one of two attacks. A charge attack, telegraphed by him becoming spiky, but also it goes across most of the room and it can be shown off screen so you don't know it's coming. And his AoE explosion from before, which is telegraphed by the pink cloud forming, except now he can charge the nuke up while moving, which might just lead to you having undodgeable attacks coming your way. Or at the very least, near undodgeable. If you do a frame perfect roll, you can't avoid it, but good luck. This is meant to be a burn phase, but due to him having too damn much health and dealing contact damage, if he touches you, this quick burn phase ends up lasting the better part of 4 minutes. It might be the hardest fight in the game due entirely to poor stat balancing, and it's a shame because this boss would genuinely be in the top 3 if he didn't have enough health to make Yzmat blush. Number 7. The Replica, the Counterfeit, the Imposter. I've tried my best to separate the runbacks from boss fights in this game, and for the most part I'd say I did alright, but unfortunately I cannot extend that grace to the boss of the Witch Academy. Not only does the run back take at minimum 15 minutes, never mind you needing to explore to gather skills and buffs, but the run back includes something truly egregious. Not just a warp maze, but a randomized warp maze. Game, that's just fucking evil. And to add further insult to injury, you'll likely need to run through this area 5 times because at the very end of the second layer, the game suddenly requires you to have Gravity Kick, which was up to this point just a cool bonus power-up, and it's literally placed right before the second lock on the boss door, which is just evil, so you can't even get that lock undone. Then, of course, when going for the true ending, there's the secret route warp maze, which thankfully isn't randomized, but it's so evil, I swear the developer just finished Shin Megami Tensei Apocalypse and thought, I can do worse. Anyways, the fight's alright. Her moveset is kinda similar to yours, and if she didn't have such an awful runback, she'd be much higher because there's a genuine fun moveset to deal with here, and you actually can hit a bit of a flow state. And her attacks are pretty well animated and fun to deal with. But after her health goes down, it turns out that was only phase 1 because now you have to deal with a second and third marionette. Honestly, the fight is still pretty fun since they chain their moves together in a way that's chaotic but fair and not too hard to dodge outside of the multi-laser attack. I don't know how to avoid that one, but you can also go for things like bursting down the puppets to bring it down to a 1v1 or try to kill them both at around the same time because the surviving puppet will get a bit more aggressive. It's a shame this fight has an obnoxious run back and is at the end of the worst level in the game because there's an excellent boss here, but it's not one I really want to engage with or go back to because I don't want to have to deal with this whole level again if I die. Number 6, Crimson Warden. You battle the Crimson Warden twice in this game, with the first time being explicitly designed to kick your ass. Honestly, I don't know if it's even possible to beat him this early, because I don't think you can really dodge or mitigate his ultimate attack in phase 2 without being killed, at least no way that I know of. But it is still a cool teaser for a boss you'll have to face later in the game, and you get payback against, and yeah, the boss is going to be on this list twice. And if you somehow do win, the boss rewards you with the consolation prize. I don't really have any negatives to say about this fight, but considering it's kind of a forced loss battle, I don't think I can put it much higher than this spot on the list, because there are genuine bosses with actual design that I think are a lot better instead of just being plot beats. Number 5, Ancient Witch. The final boss of the game, sort of. This is the first of 2 bosses back to back in the normal ending, and every source I've seen lists the 2 different battles as separate bosses despite being against the same character. I don't know, man, I'm just going with it. But what I do know is the fight has some cool ideas, they're just not executed the best. The Ancient Witch on her own doesn't have very many attacks she can do, just a few basic bullet patterns that she can create. However, she has a large arsenal of attacks to deal with due to her main gimmick being her cauldron. She can toss things into the cauldron, and they not only spawn in enemies that can usually be destroyed and sometimes even possessed, so you have extra meat shields and attack options for the player, while most of her attacks will be magic. She also has the cauldron use powerful spells on its own, like a spirit bomb. It's an interesting idea for a boss fight, but that's about all she does, and she's not really that active in the fight. She just kind of teleports and moves around the arena lazily. I'm glad this isn't one of the proper final bosses, and more so just a prelude to it. Number 4, Crimson Warden, Round 2. The actual fight with the Crimson Warden takes place a little bit later in the game than its tutorial battle counterpart. It's a simple but very well done 2-phase boss fight, with phase 1 primarily focusing on basic hand slams and swipes, while also having a bit of laser bullet hell that can be a bit more demanding than some of his other moves, but if you're good with dodge rolls, you can actually stay right up in his face and stay aggressive during this attack, which is pretty nice and rewarding. Phase 2 throws in some new attacks such as spawning in weak enemies, and on occasion you may even get a skeleton dog which can be possessed to give you an extra meat shield in case you didn't have one coming in here already, a big ass laser beam, and the classic rocks fall everyone dies. I kid on the last part, but overall I'd say it's a very good boss fight, fitting of the early game, and acting as a confidence boost for the player, allowing them to beat the monster that more than likely killed them in the game's tutorial. The fight has just enough going on for it to feel like a genuine threat, but also not be overwhelming. It looks pretty cool, and yeah, while compared to the other bosses he's extremely simple, but that's not a bad thing for such a early fight in the game. Number 3, the Reborn Ancient Witch. After sacrificing her soul to the cauldron, the Ancient Witch regains her youth, becoming the Reborn Witch, and this is a much better final boss fight. She does away with her cauldron attacks and summoning enemies, with one major exception we'll get to, and now fights you kind of the same way the player does, with her own assortments of spells and tools, at least for the first phase. It kind of reminds me of the first phase in most Castlevania final bosses. And I also appreciate that she does have some melee attacks, though you won't see them too much in phase 1 of the fight. Then we reach phase 2 where she summons the Amalgamation, an unholy fusion of the 4 major world bosses stuck together and trapped inside the cauldron, and taking an attack from each of them. At this point the witch will reduce her aggression significantly, but in order to properly beat this boss you're going to need to destroy this monster, as the witch cannot die until it's slain, and you're going to have to look out for different things like laser beams, a giant pollen explosion, a scythe throw, and the ability to start filling the arena up with poisonous water, though the last part is not really a major threat because you can just lower it by attacking the boss. And once it stays down, and even then the water's not that dangerous. But throw in a few bullets from the witch and it can be a kind of chaotic middle phase that's more so focused on the cinematic aspects of things. The final phase is much the same as phase 1, just now with increased intensity and her being a lot more aggressive with melee attacks. Now, I like the boss fight, but unfortunately, I gotta take a moment to complain about the story or lack thereof. If there was a plot to care about, then this fight would probably be higher. And I understand the silent protagonist being a trope, but the game also has a silent antagonist because there's no real plot. There's a grand total of 2 cutscenes in the game, one at the very start, one at the very end, and no, the normal ending does not count. You're literally just zooming in on a JPEG of a cauldron, and then a shadow monster scene for a bit. Anyways, that's not necessarily a deal breaker, but it makes the fact that the game's true ending, well, the game has a true ending, a lot more of a chore because we don't have a lot of clues on what we need to do to unlock the true ending other than 5 NPCs in the game saying, maybe you missed something. Like, no shit, Sherlock. I don't know. There's a good boss fight here, but that's about it. Like, without the story beats, it doesn't really hit those highs, and it's not strong enough gameplay-wise on its own to take a spot in the great tier or amazing tier. Number 2, Nether Behemoth. You know, for as much of a pain in the ass as the fire area initially is, it can be a pretty fun time once you get all the necessary movement upgrades for it, like the wall jump and double jump, which is also the first level that requires you to have movement upgrades to progress. And that does actually help this boss out because the Nether Behemoth has the decency to keep all of his health on a single health bar and not take an absurd amount of damage or an absurd amount of time to kill. And the boss also has quite a few different moves like fireballs, charging to the end of the arena, filling the arena with magma. I definitely wish it was better communicated in game, but I can appreciate that while the boss wants you to make use of the movement upgrades, well, you use them to get around a lot of his attacks, like jumping up the side of the wall to dodge his charge attack, using your air dash to get through some of his fireballs, or being really good at positioning. And the boss actually makes use of the increased movement upgrades, while still looking pretty cool as a boss fight. and since all of his attacks are fire element, outside of him just standing on you, his damage is surprisingly easy to mitigate since there's plenty of ways to reduce fire damage in the game, which I'm okay with. Now, as a mid-game boss fight, he's genuinely a really fun time, and I think he does a good job, and honestly, I gotta admit this, I do like the game's normal boss theme, but after hearing it for a majority of the boss roster, you start to get a bit sick of it, though that's not really related to this boss, it's just kind of the boss roster in general, and this is the last normal boss in the game. And while randomized upgrades could be very annoying against this boss fight, which is a blanket statement for every boss in the game, he doesn't fall into the same trappings as the Deadly Blossom, because you've now gained access to the scales which let you rig what spells and tools you'll find in the dungeon, and it doesn't take a genius to guess ice magic is good in the fire area. Overall, I do think it's a fun time, but I'm not quite sure if I'd say it's top of good tier or bottom of great tier. I'm kind of on the fence about that. I guess we'll see by whatever I put in editing. Just don't die here because the run back can get very long. Number 1, The Thing from the Cauldron. Getting all the artifacts for the true ending of the game can be obnoxious, looking at you, Toy Goldfish. But if you do get all of them, then after killing the Reborn Witch, her hat will remain. And at the very least, we get to fight the true final boss, and I can say, if nothing else, the end boss is a good time. Now, you may be thinking, oh, but if the other bosses have terrible runbacks, I can only imagine how bad this thing's runback is. Well, actually no, the Mana Rift is an extremely short dungeon that just exists as an artifact check to see that, well, you use each of them and you get a ton of power-ups to get into the boss fight. As far as the boss goes, it looks crazy and kind of reminds me of the true final boss of Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Well, phase 1 of it in particular. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. But the boss fight itself is honestly kind of a Terraria boss. I mean, you're defying gravity, bullet hell, and half the challenge is having room to stand. But thankfully, with double jump and wall jump, as well as your spin jump, anti-gravity powers, you're able to navigate this sparse arena pretty well. The boss fight is chaotic. I mean, of course it is, just look at what the hell's going on here. And it's got lasers, beams, claw swipes, bullet hell, and summoning enemies that you can possess for extra firepower and be meat shields. Thankfully though, while the boss is crazy, there's only a single health bar to go through, so the damage you see is the damage you're dealing. There's no secret third health bar or any other crazy shit here. But she has a second phase that introduces some new attacks like flying into the background to unleash a Terraria ultimate, which acts as a tense positioning check with a ton of deadly projectiles, and a black hole, which is probably supposed to be the strongest attack, but hilariously, the attack damage isn't that dangerous. It's more dangerous because it drags you to the center of the arena and can easily spike you down into the bottomless pit like it's Smash Bros. And while you don't instantly die, you do take a metric fuck ton of damage. Thankfully, I unlocked the revive skill, so I had a second chance upon death, which means that I wasn't sunk. The fight is chaotic, but it's a lot of fun, and as much of a pain in the ass as it can be to unlock the true ending, there is at least a good fight at the end. But I wouldn't say the boss earns the amazing tier, and it's not even, like, on the cusp of it. But there's still a fun time to be had here. It can be enjoyable to unleash whatever build you want against the boss, because you can more or less get whatever spells and setups you want. And I will say, I'm glad if nothing else that the game does end pretty strong. And that's going to do it for this video. Now, despite how I may sound, I didn't hate this game. There is a fun enough gameplay loop here, most of the time at least, and I think the art style is very charming, and the main protagonist has some really nice, expressive, and cute animations. And honestly, the game's filled with creativity. But it also shows why unchecked creativity can be a bad thing, and why I don't think the whole statement of let them cook is as productive or helpful as some people may say it is. It almost borders on, well, something I don't really want to get into. The problem is, it tries to be an everything game and ends up being an unfocused mess. And unfortunately, I don't think Metroidvanias work with roguelike mechanics. Sorry fans of Dead Cells, I don't like that game either. I had a fun enough time with the game, but I won't be wholeheartedly recommending it. It has a demo, so I'd say give it a try and see if you can enjoy the gameplay loop. The game is also pretty cheap, so it's not like it's some massive investment or it's going to eat a ton out of your wallet. It was like, I think, $15 for me. Anyways, if the game looked fun to you, I'd say give the demo a try and go from there. You might find something you really like. Either way, that's all I've got for this video. If you'd like to see more content of varying quality, consider liking and subscribing. And I guess for upcoming stuff, I'm playing a few other games at the moment, and I do plan on making a Monster Hunter Stories 3 boss ranking, though I won't be blasting through that game to get to the end. I'm going to take that at my own pace. So that video will be out when it gets out, but otherwise, you know, videos will come out relatively frequently. And otherwise, I'll see you all next time. And until then, take care, everyone.